the most talked about man during the 2020 lockdown in the Malaysian stock market. Sri Lim Wee Chai of topglove. Like durian, you either hate him or love him. But who is he and what is his story? To understand Tan Sri and topglove, it's important to learn about Malaysia's history with rubber. Rubber has always been a big and major export for Malaysia. In fact, during the 1930s, Malaysia supplied half of the world's rubber demand. Rubber is also partly why the British and the Japanese decided to colonize us. At the peak, nearly 70% of all rubber estates in Malaya was British owned. And on a personal note, my grandmother was a rubber tapper. Rest in peace. The first big boom of natural rubbers or NR happened during the 20s because of the rise of automobiles, more specifically tires. However, during World War II, the rise on synthetic rubber proved a challenge and the demand for natural rubber started to decline. Upon independence, Malaysia's rubber industry contributed to 30% of the nation's economy, around 30% of the employment, and 60% of total exports. However, in the 1980s, thanks to the oil shock, people wanted an alternative to synthetic rubber because oil is a key component in manufacturing synthetic rubber, and that gave the natural rubber industry a new lease of life. Now, you cannot fully understand the natural rubber industry if you do not include Thailand. And for a long time, Malaysia and Thailand, up until only recently, were the big dogs in the industry. However, the way they developed their industry could not be more different. Since the 1980s, Thailand has had a major focus on tires and, of course, upstream natural rubber production, meaning to say they really focus on rubber plantation estates. But in Malaysia's case, they started to look elsewhere. They felt that palm oil was a lot more profitable, had a higher yield on the land compared to planting rubber trees. And therefore, the upstream sector started to shrink in Malaysia. However, the bigger difference is that they decided to go downstream, specifically with gloves. Through the introduction of Tun M's Master Industrial Plan No. 1 and 2, which went from 1986 to 2005, the glove-making segment really started to boom. The timing was, you can say, almost perfect because the HIV and AIDS epidemic started to grow, and of course, gloves are very vital in combating the rise of this sort of challenges. So now, healthcare gloves are in big demand. And one person who took full advantage of this was none other than Mr. Lim Wee Chai. Born in 1958, Mr. Lim hails from a small town in Negeri Sembilan called Titi, which is around 2 hours from KL. Although the town was generally poor, on a relative basis, his family was actually decently well-to-do. They were already in the rubber trading business and had around 10 to 20 acres of rubber plantation land. Deciding that doing hard labor in the rubber plantations was not for him, he really studied hard so he could escape that sort of hardship. He eventually entered the University of Malaya to study physics. Graduating in 1982, he decided to start working as a sales executive in the air conditioning industry. While he was working, he would actually learn accounting at night because he really wanted to start his own business. After a few years of working, wanting to have an expanded view of the world, he decided to get his master's in the United States. Interestingly, he saved up at that point in time $10,000 US. He went there and he came back with that same $10,000 US intact. He didn't have to spend an additional dime. In other words, pretty careful with money. Upon returning, he decided to go back to his old air conditioning company for another 3 years. And then finally, in 1991, he decided to branch out and start his own company, aka Topglove. Another such company that was born around the same time as Topglove was Hartalega. Our friends at Do It made a video about them. Go check it out. The intention for Mr. Lim to switch industries was very simple. It was all about profit margins. He saw that the air conditioning industry had margins of about 5%, whereas on good years, glove making can give you 40% margins. However, the problem was many people saw the same thing, which is why at its peak in 1990, there were over 250 glove-making companies, mainly from Taiwan and the US. However, by the year 2005, that number dropped to 100, and by 2018, that number was less than 50. Consolidation. One of these failed companies actually sold Top Glove their lines and factories for a mere 180,000 ringgit. This was the start of Top Glove's production. The first 10 years was all about growth. From 1997 to 2001, sales of Top Glove grew from 35 million to 139 million. Starting with just one line in 1991, the company had 54 by the end of the decade. Manufacturing capabilities wise, they reached 3.24 billion pieces a year in 2001. Oh, and it's also the same year they got listed on the Malaysian stock market. The 2000s are filled with new highs. In 2002, they got promoted to the main board on KLSC, one of the fastest in Malaysian history. They set up a factory in Hat Yai, Thailand that almost doubled their 2001 production capacity. And they became the top 2 largest disposable latex glove manufacturers in the world. One of the things that gave the business a boost, and this might sound familiar to you, was the SARS virus. This boosted their sales by 58% from 2003 to 2004. At this point, another type of glove that you might have heard before, nitrile gloves, only constitute about less than 20% of their sales. Remember this, will be very important later on, and I'll be discussing on this. By 2006, just 5 years after listing, Top Glove reached multi-bagger status. In fact, 10-bagger status. To be precise, they were up 1,294%. Another key move made in this decade was Sri Lim Wee Chai's decision to go upstream, going back to his roots. Much of this was done because they wanted more control over their raw material in terms of cost, specifically latex concentrate. By going into upstream, Top Glove is able to supply 70 to 80% of their needs in terms of latex. In the same year, Top Glove already supplies 20% of the world's glove requirements. In 2008 and 2009, while the world was suffering, Top Glove had its own challenges. For one, a stronger ringgit meant that they would make less sales and profits, and in terms of raw material prices like latex, crude oil, meant that cost increases would put pressure on their profits. That said, the company was still able to make acquisitions like Mediflex and started factory number 21, which is located in Klang. H1N1, another virus, also played a role in boosting the fortunes of Top Glove. If there was a report card of the 2000s for the company, it would look something like this. They started off 2001 with 139 million in sales. They ended the decade with 2.1 billion. Market cap started with 164 million. 10 years later, 3.7 billion. 53 lines grew to 355 lines. And in terms of their production, they started with 3.24 billion pieces a year, and it grew to 31.5 billion pieces a year. Now, let's talk about the 2010s. If the 2000s was an era of growth and new highs, the 2010s is the era of growth through diversification. Specifically nitrile gloves, which have higher margins. In 2012 alone, the company committed 3 billion ringgit to invest in new technologies, highly focused on the nitrile gloves. Now, interestingly, this is also the very first time that Tan Sri highlighted minimum wage to be a big challenge for the glove industry and definitely Top Glove as well. Here's a 2012 excerpt from their annual report. The industry's challenge currently is the minimum wage policy set at RM 900 monthly for Peninsular Malaysia, which will take effect on the 1st of January 2013. The group intends to reduce the use of low-skilled labor and improve manufacturing processes by using more advanced technology and systems. So you can see from quite early on, Tan Sri have always seen the labor as a big cost headache, and he wishes to, reduce dependency on it as fast as possible. Of course, the language will change a little bit in 2018. There were 3 different viruses that gave Top Glove a boost: H7N9, MERS, and bird flu in this decade. Their upstream ventures continue to happen with the acquisitions of PT Agro Pratama Sejahtera of Indonesia, and all of this helped Top Glove achieve a market share of 25% in 2013. And yet another virus, Zika, was helping Top Glove out in 2016. With this virus alone, the volume actually grew by 11% versus the previous year, and nitrile growth outpaced it at 30%. Now, 2 interesting developments in 2017. Number 1, the company got listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange, or SGX. And the second one is their entry into the condom business. As I told you, this is a decade of diversification. I guess you could say they are spreading, or maybe should I say they are stretching their wings. Now, 2018 was a pretty tough time for the company. There was an investigation done by the foreign press, and they accused Top Glove of several mishandling of their foreign labor. The allegations include forced labor, forced overtime, debt bondage, withheld wages, and passport confiscation. Eventually, things got a little bit better, and the aggressive language towards the minimum wage and foreign labor started to die down a little bit. Now, the remainder of the 2010s were pretty eventful as well. Around 2018, condom manufacturing started to commence. 2 very key acquisitions in the form of Espion for surgical gloves and Dura Medical for dental hygiene products also happened. Now, if there was a report card for the 2010s for the company, it would look something like this. Started with a 2.05 billion sales, grew to 4.8 billion sales. Of course, it did not grow as fast as the previous decade. In terms of market cap, it's a little bit better. Started off at 3 billion, now it's 12 billion. Factories wise, we went from 21 to 33 at least. And in terms of pieces manufactured, started at 41.55 billion per year, and then it reached 84.2 full capacity. Probably the most important one is that nitrile glove segment for Top Glove from 11% of total sales to 42% in 2019. Now here, I want to take a little bit of pause and dispel a certain myth about nitrile gloves. Many people think that when they compare Top Glove to Hartalega, that Hartalega's margins are higher than Top Glove because they are higher technology. When in fact, it's actually about product mix. Hartalega had a lot more nitrile gloves as a percentage of their sales versus Top Glove, which is why they initially had higher margins. But as you can see from this chart, Top Glove have basically caught up. Why? Because they've introduced more nitrile gloves into their production capacity. Finally, we come to the most exciting period in Top Glove's history probably, which was from 2020 to today. Very interesting, especially if you started investing during the lockdown. As you probably know, Malaysia, like most countries in the world, experienced a lockdown, and this specific virus or pandemic was a lot more severe than previous ones. In the past, we just had to wear masks, but this time we can't even leave our houses. And in this period, where everyone was in front of their trading screen, Top Glove made huge sales and market cap jumps in a short span of time, less than a year actually. In fact, market cap wise, they hit a high of 77 billion ringgit, and in terms of sales, 7.2 billion. Many things happened during that period. You have the US ban on top glove because of certain labor issues. ASP, average selling prices for latex gloves, whatever, was skyrocketing. Their utilization hit more than 100%. And of course, there's a lot of other things that are missing out here. So much wealth was created in 2020 and the first half of 2021. And I have to admit, I was a beneficiary too. Unfortunately, nothing lasts forever, and starting in 2021, things are about to turn. The share price started to plunge, and in order to comfort shareholders, as you can see from this image here, Tan Sri tried to calm the market down by initiating share buybacks. However, no one was really buying his story. As of this recording, Top Glove's share price is down approximately 90% from its peak. And from the lows of 2020 to the height, the market cap actually generated 65 billion ringgit in value for investors. However, by mid-2022, all of that was lost. For as many supporters he created, there are as many haters as well. What about the man himself? What is Tan Sri like as a person? For one, it's obvious to see he is incredibly ambitious. He wants Top Glove to be a lot bigger and wants the company to be a Fortune 500 company by 2040. And if you look in the past, he has had similar ambitious goals for that time. He wanted to be bigger than Maybank. He wanted to be the world's largest nitrile glove maker, wanted to be the world's largest glove maker, largest latex glove maker, wanted to have 25, 30, maybe even more % market share. I mean, he even named his company Top Glove. Now, on a personal level, he's also very health conscious. He plays a lot of badminton. By the way, fun fact, based on this chart here, if you didn't know, you can actually add 7 years to your life if you play badminton. And quite crazily, he intends to live to 120 years old. Maybe he can be the first Malaysian CEO to be 100 years old. Now, as a CEO, there is no dispute that he is a master executor. He has a sharp mind, and he can definitely deliver results. If he aims for it, historically, he has achieved it. He's also what I will call a pure businessman, focusing on being the biggest and incredibly pro-profit. Case in point, let me remind you, he decided to hop from the air-conditioned industry to the glove one simply because of margins. To prove my point further, he also obsesses on a lot of things that not many other people would do, like market share or even market capitalization. Now, of course, that's debatable as to whether or not a CEO should be focusing on that. Of course, this discussion is for another video. His citing of the minimum wage as a challenge to Top Glove's fundamental is yet another hint, or maybe proof, that he is a red-blooded capitalist. Now, of course, like many great people, he has mistakes too. His alleged mistreatment of his staff has caused quite a bit of business headaches and hiccups. Using shareholders' monies to do buyback just to calm the market down may not be the wisest choice in terms of capital allocation. And the writing off of his Espion investment has left a little bit of a bitter taste in a lot of investors' mouth. But of course, in his eyes, it was a good decision because it turns out there was a lot of hanky-panky going on and he wanted to stop the bleeding quickly. All in all, you cannot argue that Tan Sri has been a shining light in the Malaysian business community. And whether you like it or not, he is one of the country's largest employers. He has generated many tax dollars for us, for the Malaysian government, and for that, he has my respect.